we are rolling once again. Welcome, everyone. You are listening to the Solvable Mysteries podcast. My name is Yuras, and as every week, I'm joined by my co host, Glenn. Hi, Cove. How are you feeling on this weekend, my man?
And I'm doing awesome. Having an awesome day. Had a good day out at the beach, enjoying Southern California, and did some surfing and body surfing and some boogie boarding, and the weather was beautiful. So yeah, feeling good. That's ready to talk about some tragic stuff.
Very tragic. Now, this is breaking news. We have the death of Naya Rivera for episode number 54, I believe, and basically this case we were definitely planning on doing something probably different. Obviously, when we were planning that, we didn't know what was happening with the Naya Rivera situation. Actually, her disappearance didn't even get my attention before I found out that she was sadly dead. You know what I mean? So only that's when I actually realized how big of an event this was, because this is, I think, definitely this is, like one of those really big situations, like the death of Kobe Bryant and things like that. So, you know, I guess we're here to talk about Naya Rivera herself, her life a little bit, and then obviously the podcast is called the Solvable Mysteries podcast, and we wouldn't be talking about this case if it didn't have a hint of mystery. And I think this case definitely has that, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I know it was something that right after it happened, I ended up talking with my kind of friends and family a couple different times about it. Like it was definitely one of those things. I guess partially because it was local here. So just like you mentioned Kobe Bryant, so interesting that both the Kobe Bryant tragedy and this thing happened, I don't know, within just 10-20 miles of where I live. So yeah, once again, it was something that was local, happened to kind of a big time celebrity, and was kind of a strange death. Like you don't hear about it. I mean, it happens for sure, as we'll go into, but you don't think of a lot of like really famous people drowning,
Yeah.
right? That's not usually how they go, though it has happened to like people like Natalie Wood. I mean, I guess that almost shows you, other than like the Titanic when a bunch of famous people from that era went down, the fact that you can probably count on one hand the number of famous people that have drowned in recent history.
Sorry, guys, we're back. Technical difficulties on our end. So, yeah, as you were saying, Glenn, most famous people don't usually go down, don't pass away in this manner, right? Or at least when it's deemed a tragic death of a celebrity, it's usually not by drowning. You don't really hear about these cases that often, right?
Yeah, I mean, because like I was saying, I mean, you can kind of count on one hand. I mean, I could think of like Natalie Wood. I think one of the Beach Boys, I think it was Dennis Wilson, and like Whitney Houston drowned in her own bathtub. But that's kind of it. Oh yeah, I think there was a Prime Minister of Australia who strangely like went in the ocean and never came out, which was like a big scandal. But that's it, yeah. Like, so it's not, I mean, when you think of all the other people, especially that we'll talk about later, who have died from drug overdose or been killed or accidents or things like that, drowning, especially the specifics around this circumstance, which, we will definitely review. I think there's still some open questions, even though there's some kind of official explanation.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you that, the official version of this case could still be contested in some ways, because, I mean, as we will go into the death and to the whole event, I think we will come to certain points where it's like, is that really the most plausible way? And I think just in general, like the investigators and the police, I guess sheriff and the detectives, the whole police office sort of gave a theory on what happened, and they seem like they're completely set on that theory. Now, they did speak with Naya's son, who was, unfortunately also involved in that situation. Now, Naya's son definitely survived, but they did get to speak to him, and they, heard his version. So I don't know, maybe they definitely have more information than us, but then again, the official theory could still be contested, at least in my eyes.
Yeah, I think especially there's no footage of it. There's some weird extra details that kind of just the scenario when they gave it, I was like, I don't know if I really trust that whole scenario.
Yeah.
And then the only witness is a 4-year-old. So how good is that testimony?
Exactly. That's a question I will have for you, maybe even right now. How credible is a 4-year-old? Because I never had kids, and you definitely had a child who was 4 years old at the time. So I think you're definitely better equipped to talk about that situation. I really can't gauge at all how credible a 4-year-old is. Could they clearly remember things, or is it like still not? Is it still like woozy with them?
Yeah, I think it's definitely woozy. I mean, the other thing is even the verbal ability of a kid at that age is like super variable. I have a neighbor. There's a little girl that lives next door. Really, really nice kid. And one of the things that's remarkable about her is that she is 3 years old, and her speaking ability, her verbal ability, is extra good. But it still kind of goes off the rails. Like, she was on the 4th of July, she was hanging out with us outside while we were allegedly doing fireworks. And
yeah, because it's illegal.
Yeah, because it's illegal here in LA. So I say allegedly. And like, she kept getting confused that I was like that I wasn't like my wife's dad. And we're not different ages. My wife is the same age as I am. So right. like, or like that I was like my kid's cousin, or like, you know what I mean? So like, even the understanding is weird. But yet this kid who's 3, I think that's what makes her so special, is she talks like she's maybe a 5-year-old until you, like you said, you get down to like the reasoning. But yeah, I mean, I think children 5 and under are especially notorious for getting things confused. And then just think of it like, we don't really know. It's not like they interviewed this little boy like there was a criminal investigation, right? So then like the kid could very well get ideas implanted in his head. There's a famous case, just like you asked about. There's a famous case here in the United States called the McMartin preschool case, where they interviewed all these kids and they kind of put ideas in their heads, and like next thing you know, they're like they dragged like this poor like old lady and her family off to court for like this whole like satanic trial thing that turned out to be a crazy moral panic, and it was all because like little kids are not reliable. So I mean, that's the thing. I know, the only witness is a 4-year-old. The story that they kind of settled on, which we don't have his words, we have their interpretation of his testimony, is a little bit weird. So at this point, I think we definitely have a mystery, a solvable mystery here that we can hash out.
Exactly. Before we actually go into the details of the whole event, I think we should talk a little bit about Naya's life, since we have prepared, to do so. I see a lot of information about her in the script, so I think it would be useful just to, not necessarily quickly, but definitely just go through her life, just for the people that don't know about her, just to give them a sense why this is a really big event, and why this pretty much just shifted our plans from, because we have a whole list of cases, and this one definitely was not on that list, because if it was, we would be, FBI would be looking into us, so let's jump to her life a little bit, right? I don't know, man, you want to get it out of the way, at least the beginning parts?
Let me put a dent in it. So Naya Rivera was a local here in Southern California. So she's from Santa Clarita, California. She was born there on January 12th, 1987, and raised in the Valencia area of Santa Clarita. So for those of us local to Los Angeles and Southern California, that is the land of Magic Mountain, which is a very popular Six Flags amusement park here. And also Hurricane Harbor, the water park is there.
Yeah.
She is she's lived here pretty much. She lived here her whole life, so that makes sense why she would do things kind of local to that area. I think that also actually, now that I think of it, makes sense why she went to Lake Piru, because Lake Piru is actually not that far. There's like a straight road from there, which would make it like maybe a 25 or 30-minute drive from where she was from to Lake Piru. So she's of mixed ancestry, like my wife is. So she was of African American, German, and Puerto Rican descent, which is very common for folks from kind of the Caribbean and Puerto Rico. That makes sense. Her parents, her mother was a former model, Yolanda, and George Rivera does not say what he did. Oldest of 3 children. Wow, her younger brother is a former NFL tight end, and her younger sister is a runway model, Nicaela Rivera. So family
really
full of
good genetics, you know what I mean? That's what I'm getting out of this amazing genetics.
Yeah, beautiful and athletic people who apparently are able to do a lot of different things. Yeah, I mean the NFL, gosh, especially as a tight end, that's a pretty prominent achievement. So, I mean, she started in the entertainment industry, let's say, very early at 8 or 9 months. She was starting to do, I guess, some kind of modeling, infant modeling, I guess. And then, as things go on, she starts to, do other jobs as well. So she's doing commercials for Kmart as a baby, and then she moves on to acting. She appeared in as Hillary Winston in the Royal Family sitcom in 1991. I don't really remember that show, but says it. Oh, okay. I see. So it was actually the show that Red Fox was in. There's a famous comedian. Part of his act was pretending he was having a heart attack. And
then he had one. Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
that.
he had one, and then they all thought he was joking, and they laid there, died. So which she saw that. That's fascinating. So she was actually there for that. Wow. So that's pretty interesting. And then actually kind of an overlap with our topic today about kind of the cluster of deaths around a certain TV show. So wow, she was there even for one of the most famous so-called on-screen deaths. Okay, so then after that, she was and like the who's who of the 90s TV shows: Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Family Matters, Baywatch, and a bunch of other shows I hadn't really heard of. So she worked a lot. She was in a music video, B2K's Why I Love You, and she was on the Bernie Mac show. I used to watch that. 2002. Wow. So she definitely had quite a good entertainment role. But it's interesting here that it says that she must have had a really good work ethic. I guess there's a lot of positive things to say about her, because she used to work jobs as a telemarketer, which, telemarketing is a very thankless job. You're getting a lot of angry people telling you to go away.
It's the worst. It's the worst job in existence. I think telemarketing is so horrible. Oh my god.
Both ways, right? It's horrible to do it sometimes, I think, but it's also horrible to have to do it.
Telemarketing should be banned, man.
Yeah, I agree. And then and she also worked as a nanny, which that's a challenging job, and as a greeter. So wow, it's interesting that she did that even with all those other sources of income. So she must have just really been an active person. And 2006, 2007, she took part in a Mark E. Swinton's play, You Don't Know Me, the musical. So maybe this is where you start to see the intersection of her starting to do a lot more musical entertainment. Yeah, singing as part of her entertainment, which is, it's interesting. And I think that's when we talk about the show that she's most famous for. which we're just about to mention right here, the show Glee. So she was cast as, in 2009, she was cast as Santana Lopez, a high school cheerleader. And this was on Fox, and it's a pretty popular show. I mean, certainly based on the groundswell of you know, I guess sorrow around what happened to her. The show, I'm trying to
Mm-hmm.
enunciate what kind of show that is. I mean, it's kind of funny because to me, I feel like there's a show like that kind of happens every 10 years or so. There'll be a show, or at least one show like that that's sort of like a mix of music and drama on television. Back when I was a little kid, that show was Fame. There used to be a show called Fame that was about an arts school. And it was, it was kind
Yeah.
of gave everybody an excuse to do a lot of singing and dancing and musical numbers. I feel like maybe Glee was sort of like the 2000s version of Fame in a way. And obviously, it's not exactly the same, but
Yeah.
it seemed to attract that same kind of audience, like an audience that, it for sure attracts what they would call like a rainbow audience, I would say. So let me just call it out.
A mixed bag.
Well, no. So, yeah, it is very diverse, right? So it doesn't obviously attract an audience from a lot of different backgrounds. But I think that shows like that also, just my experience, tend to be very attractive to like gay, lesbian, transgender audiences, because it's often like I don't know, for whatever reason. Sometimes there's folks that have a lot of affinity for singing and dancing and performing, and I know, like, when I was in school,
Yeah.
high school and college, etc., like, kind of sometimes people gravitate towards that, like they may not be as into, let's say, sports sometimes, or maybe they are, but then they're not into singing. I guess the kind of personality, it's like an artistic personality. Maybe that's the best way to put it.
I think that's a good way. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe that's the safest way to put it. Is it tends to
Right.
attract like digging this hole deeper. Yeah, it tends to attract, like, I think, a very diverse group of people that have an artistic temperament. The kind of people that want to watch a TV show with a lot of singing and dancing and
Some drama. A little bit,
yeah. I mean, it's funny too because you think about it. Like in the old days, 50s, 60s, 40s, 30s, there used to be a lot of musicals, right? Like I mean,
Oh yeah.
first it was the actual plays, and then it was movies. There were a bunch of I mean, and I like musicals too. I mean, there's a couple like Oklahoma, or Fiddler on the Roof, or some things like that. I think even some musicals I like, and I'm not necessarily that into like that kind of entertainment, but yeah. So I think Glee definitely filled that like niche, let's say, and I think it was wildly popular, and maybe.
Oh yeah, it definitely was. On that end, like, the popularity of the show was amazing. I think at some point it was like a top 10 show. Like probably a top 10 show. We actually had, when a show in America is really popping, it's really popping when we here in Lithuania get like that version of the show, you know what I mean? Because like we get like the Breaking Bad, we got Sopranos, we got pretty much everything, we definitely got Game of Thrones. And I specifically remember Glee being on here in Lithuania. So if a show from America makes it all the way to, Eastern Europe, that show is global. So just to give a better like evaluation on the success of the show, it was wildly successful. I didn't really watch it that much because it's, as you've said, it's probably not our cup of tea or whatever, but like it's a wildly successful show, and everyone on that show was really talented.
Yeah, it's interesting too when you think about it, because the way television entertainment has shifted so much to reality television, because reality television is less expensive to make. You had all these shows around singing and dancing that were reality TV based, and like you said, were they themselves were top 10. I think it really says a lot about Glee that it was able to compete successfully for eyeballs and mind share against those shows. I mean, it's it's kind of a losing battle to try to fight against them, because like the Simon Cowells of the world are gonna just keep on doing their show and get so much of the ratings. But for them to be able to keep things fresh and bring on, obviously Naya was a really talented person, and it was a show full of really talented people. So it really was a testament, I guess, and a great opportunity. So yeah, I would say that was what she was the most famous for. And she also, besides being on this show and playing a certain role,
Yeah.
she had other um
Ventures?
appearance, their ventures afterwards. Yeah, it's a good way to put it. I mean, I think she was able to take that role, and it's like, gosh, you're already getting famous for singing and dancing. Why not become a musical artist? Which she did, and
Oh yeah.
that I think is also, that's impressive too, right? Given what's happened to the music industry, how the music industry is not the big money train it used to be, and it's hard to make a living doing that.
I think it has shifted from like the the music, like let's say genres that were getting a lot of money back in like the early 2000s. It has like pop, you know what I mean? Pop is really not what it used to be. I mean, it's pretty much like urban music is really what took over the world right now, and that's where the money is. But let's say the music that Naya would like to be performing, it's actually not a big money maker, because it's not the days of like Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera back in the early 2000s when pop was really super big. It was like the main genre in music. It's definitely not there anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I think the trope is still true that it's always been the case for a lot of musical artists that unless you're really huge, like a Michael Jackson or somebody like that, you're making most of your money. Like you're making some money off of your record sales, but if you really want to make money, you're making most of your money off of performing in concerts
Yeah,
and ticket
exactly,
sales,
exactly.
which is just exhausting. So that's like if you pick that career path, you must be really dedicated to performing, and not everybody really wants to do that. I mean, that's a grind. So
Yeah,
she did some other stuff. I don't know how much we want to
I think
go into the rest of
it's
yeah.
the time to jump into the tragic events that uh happened. So we have this CCTV footage, and I think we could just pretty much leave it here while we talk about what actually happened now. You will soon see on this footage Naya Rivera's G-Wagon Mercedes Jeep arriving at this parking lot. Now she's gonna arrive with her 40-year-old son, and they will essentially this is Lake Piru, by the way. Also, you have taken a trip to Lake Piru, so I think that's your end of the footage is definitely coming on a little bit later on in the show. But yeah, pretty much this is Lake Piru, and this is where it happened. So I don't know, man, you wanna once again talk a little bit about this event?
Yeah, I can get into it. So I just thought this will be sort of my take as a local, being relatively close to where this happened, and having had my own share of going to some of these lakes. So California, especially Southern California, has always been very challenged by having a water supply. The fact is we really didn't until about 90 years ago or 80 years ago. Mulholland, there's a famous road named after him. He was the one that brought water to Los Angeles. But as part of kind of all these different projects that went on as they made California like robust enough with the infrastructure to support a big population, there's a lot of different reservoirs. And some of those reservoirs you can swim in. Some of them you can only boat in, which I always thought was strange, that you can leave like gas fumes and stuff in them, but you can't put your body in it. But I guess it has to do with whatever biological things might be transmitted from your body. That was before COVID. Yeah, it's strange. So there's a lake, for instance. There's a lake that's pretty near me, about as near as Piru is, at least driving wise, maybe not as the crow flies, called Castaic, which I can boat in, and I can swim in, and I can fish in if I want to. But you can only swim in different designated places. There's another one you can only boat in, you can't swim in, called Casitas, and that's over in Ojai near Santa Barbara. And then this one, I had never been to it. So before, I did a little field trip to take the footage, I'd been to a shooting range about 10 years ago that's adjacent to it, but I'd never actually seen it with my own eyes. I just kind of knew about it. It's a little bit remote. It's strange, even though it's not that far from where I live here in the San Fernando Valley in Los Angeles. There's basically a mountain range between me and it. So it's on the other side of these mountains. But for Naya, like I said, where she lived or where her family's from over near Magic Mountain, there's just this straight like highway down past some farms. She hangs a couple of right turns and she's kind of going up this
it's right
mountains
there.
And it's right there. I went and I was like, oh, this is like a really nice, like I think we might go back there. We were definitely like pleased with and you drive, you'll see when we do the drive later, it's like this nice little small town. So anyway, yes, so she goes. Apparently, when I was overhearing some of the locals, when I was taking some of the footage, she used to do this a lot. So she was very comfortable. This wasn't like a first time thing, which is what I kind of wondered when I first heard about it. So she had apparently gone on July 8th to Lake Piru. She'd rented a pontoon boat, which is a boat that it's really made for like a waterway without any waves. So yeah, it's like a good boat. Like if you were going to party on it, if you wanted to maybe fish off the side of it and drink some beers listen to some music. Yeah.
I just want to step in for a few moments. Like this boat really looks like it's just the sole purpose of this boat that Naya Rivera and her son Josie were actually on this boat. The only purpose this boat serves is to float on water. That's the only purpose this boat serves, because I'm thinking a strong current, some waves would pretty much tip this in 5 seconds. You know what I'm saying? Or necessarily.
Oh yeah.
Or like the wind not necessarily would tip it over, but would definitely push it away. You know what I mean? Like it would push far away into the distance. If someone would leave the boat, they could potentially find themselves in some big troubles.
I think especially that's a good point, because there's nothing aerodynamic or hydrodynamic about the top part of that boat at all, right? It's got big flat. It's basically like a big floating platform. It's a floating platform that is made for a waterway with no waves at all. The only place I've seen it that I think would even be remotely challenging is on the Colorado River, down on the border of the state line of California and Arizona and Nevada. Specifically Arizona and California, where I've been. I've seen them docked up at like houses and seen people riding up and down the river on them in pretty strong current. But like I said, no waves, no rapids like that. This thing is just it's like a party platform. You can go and you can have some guests on it. You can drink some beers. You can maybe do some fishing off the side of it. You can listen to some music. And I guess in the case of Naya, you can have a little kind of comfortable, because you can kind of sit upright in it, right? It's not like a metal boat or a rowboat or something where you kind of have to sit and sit in it, right?
Exactly.
You're sitting up above the water. Yeah. So it's kind of a weird kind of boat. So yeah, they go, and what happened is she went and she rented the boat with her son just by themselves. So there's no other adult. And, they're up there. And this Lake Piru is just north of Los Angeles. It's in Ventura County. It's technically, I think, right on the edge of those Padres National Forest, which covers a lot of the mountains up in Ventura and Santa Barbara County. So yeah, 3 hours after they left the dock, and it was a boat rental. Usually you rent them for about 3 hours or so on a per hour basis. Like they're like, hey, where's the boat? and like the lake's going to probably close for the night in terms of like water activities.
Yeah.
So, coincidentally, another boater finds like her son Josie alone asleep on the boat with here's the detail, with his life jacket on around 5 o'clock, which like I said, I think that the gate closes at 7. You can camp there. I don't know if you can camp there right now with COVID, which we'll go into, but yeah. So, and they said the boat was in so it's already bad when you find a 4-year-old by himself in a boat. That's not a good sign.
That's a very bad sign,
Yeah.
That's a very bad sign.
That's like either way something bad happened. The boat was in what's called the Narrows, which is an area at the north end of the lake. I wasn't really able to see that. We'll see it in my footage, but yeah, it says here it can be quite deep and windy, and I think the wind is really when they talk about the currents, because I was looking at it, and when I was looking at the water, I was like, where could currents come from? Because when it's not winter or spring and there's no rainfall, like these rivers aren't really flowing into it. So I was like, where are the currents coming from? I guess it could be from temperature differences and really the wind. So the wind does blow there. At one point, my wife didn't want to get out of the car because we were at like a really, really windy point where it was actually cold. Even though it was a hot summer day, the wind was like definitely off of this big body of water. It was making it pretty cold, even in the middle of like July, in like a hot part of Southern California. So they found an adult life jacket on board, which means that she wasn't wearing it, Naya wasn't wearing it, and they found her identification. So that, I think, told them whose kid that was there, though they already probably knew. And Josie, here's the part that we really get into how reliable are small children. He says that they were swimming. Okay. And he says his mother had helped him climb back into the boat. I'm trying to think even how you get in and out. I don't even know how you get into the water from a boat like that. I'm not even sure if you're supposed to swim there. It sounds like you could. I mean, I'm assuming she didn't break the rules, but like I said, there's some of these lakes you're not supposed to swim in, or you're not supposed to. But I think I've heard of people water skiing and things like that here, so it may be fine. It may be. I think like Castaic, which is another nearby lake that's very similar to this lake, you could do water skiing and things like that. So I guess you can get in there, but I think this is where we're gonna get into the safety discussion pretty soon. Says his mother was not wearing a life jacket, and they said it's known locally for strong, unpredictable currents and whirlpools. And I was like, where does the whirlpool come from that caused the deaths of swimmers in the past? I was trying to think if that's a whirlpool going to like a drain or something from when they tap into the water. But I don't know how often that happens versus this just being an emergency water reservoir. And like you said,
right. What I wanted to say is that you are right. This water definitely seems pretty still now. As we can see, like the boat that is disappearing in the distance, I believe that is the boat of Naya Rivera that her and Josie was on. And this is where the CCTV footage pretty much cuts off, and I think we could jump to the footage that you have taken over the weekend. I think it will definitely illustrate to people a little bit better about what the scenery is like and what the water is like. So, I think we should start off with the drive to the place. So I think this is the dash cam footage that you have taken over the weekend, right?
Yeah, I just took my dash cam and I uploaded the clips. So if you're watching this on our YouTube channel, you're seeing me basically drive from Northridge, where I live, over through Simi, up the 118, get off at Moore Park, drive through Moore Park, and then you drive down this crazy windy road on the I think it's the 23. It becomes this really crazy windy gravelly road down to Fillmore. And then once you get to Fillmore, you're still driving another 20 minutes. And you drive into like what looks like, I mean, for me, it's very quaint because we don't really have a lot of small towns around here. You drive into this little old, like we almost wanted to live there. This little small town with like a small town park and a small town church and stores that were built in like the 20s and 30s. I think actually, incidentally, this is an area that, like I mentioned, that, that it's a pretty big deal with all the dams and reservoirs and stuff. At one point, I think Fillmore, this area was actually crushed by a massive flood that happened when a dam broke. I think it
God
was.
damn.
Yeah, back in like the 30s. I think the 20s or 30s, there was a huge dam that broke. So, yeah, so we drive down there and we go and we drive up to this little town, and then you're still driving past the little town up into the mountains, and then you finally reach the lake, and
Those are the mountains, right? Those are the mountains in the back that you are
they're,
referring to, right?
yeah, they're coming up. I'm gonna
Oh,
kind of vamp a little bit till we get to that part, just to
yeah.
kind of set the stage a little bit, because it was interesting that. Here we go. Yeah, so you can see us kind of taking this windy little road up there to the lake, and when we got right to the lake, there was this memorial right at the lake.
For Naya.
Yeah, for Naya. So there was a bunch of flowers and pictures and mementos and things that people left, and we have some shots of that we'll show in a moment. But yeah, here it goes. You can see kind of right at the sort of, there's like a dam right at the end of the lake. There's a dam, keeping the water back, and you can see there's this this shrine.
Oh yeah,
Essentially left her there. It's interesting because along these stretches of roads, like hers wasn't even the only shrine there. There was a shrine to someone else there. Some locals pointed out. I mean, people die in the curves of road and stuff here all the time. So every so often you would see a wreath or something for someone who had died, either in the lake itself or maybe in an accident on the road. So
goddamn, you really have to be you can't do some crazy stuff around here.
No.
It's a dangerous place.
Yeah, this is like rural California for sure. And yeah, I mean, just stuff happens, right? Like you can't, just unfortunately accidents happen. And yeah, so we went, and it's really scenic. Like it's a really beautiful lake. I mean, it was a beautiful day. I think you and I were talking about before the show, because of sort of the lack of activity because of COVID and other things going on. It's like the whole world is in HD these days. Like it's everything is just, or 4K. Like everything looks nice because there's less air pollution. And so the thing was, we weren't even sure if it was going to be open. I'd called ahead of time, but they only had a recording, and it's sort of been on and off again because of all the different closures here in the States because of the COVID crisis. We weren't sure. I wasn't sure even what we were going to see, but when I looked in the map, it looked like at least there was a road driving by the lake, so we'd be able to take pictures. And you'll see that when I get to the end of this little drive, unfortunately, the lake was closed.
It was closed. God damn, it was closed.
Yeah, I think it was closed for two reasons. I think they may have closed it because when they were looking for a body, they didn't want someone to run over it by accident and damage it. So with a boat, so boat propeller. So that's one reason. And it's just basically kind of like there's always the chance that they want to preserve the evidence, right?
Exactly.
But then, so that's one reason. And then the other reason is, all of a sudden, in the news, COVID's been really big again. And so they've kind of closed off entire areas. And I think this park had decided to close down for whatever reason, its campsites and things like that.
I think it's part of maybe the local government told them to do that. Who knows? Or it was because of Naya. I would say it's probably more realistic that it was because of Naya. And since Naya was such a big thing in the US, and even internationally, she was well known. Like I knew about her, before this case, I definitely knew about her, and I think people just knew that this would generate so much media that they were probably taking safety precautions.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's got to be that, because I went to the beach today and everything was open. So at least and this was also in Ventura County. So the same county that this happened in. So yeah, I think just so it's interesting. You'll see when you get to the end of this footage, there's two things that are closed. There's the campground and the ranger station is actually closed here at the end, and then there's actually a neighborhood of Lake Piru right there. Like there's houses beyond that little road, and like if you just as I keep going left there's like an actual like neighborhood of people. It
Do
seems
people
pretty cool.
live in this place? Probably real estate is probably astronomical prices.
Well, that's what we were wondering. It's either it is or it isn't, because some of it is it's so remote that it might be hard to get. Like we were like, how do you even like your nearest Costco is like a 45-minute drive. So I don't know. It's sort of, but there is a town locally that has like some big supermarkets and normal restaurants and stuff. And then, so what we did was we backtracked and I found some places to stop and get some footage. I had 3 cameras with me in my phone. So what you'll see is a combination of different.
Like a professional, you know what I mean? Like a real professional for the show. We're finally moving up, man.
I try, yeah. So I went and I got a bunch of footage of that. And, it's really, really calm. And I have another video that I took that I splice in some of the memorial stuff, because there was just kind of a stream of people stopping to leave remembrances for her at the shrine at the dam at the south part of the lake. So we were right here. These videos are being taken. Most of these videos I took from kind of the middle of the lake on the west side. Yeah, so the west side of the lake, that's the north up there. Then down there's the south where the dam is. So the north is where they, at the time when I took this, I wasn't really sure where they had found her yet until I did some more research. The north, so like past that gate that we can go, would have been closer. It sounds like she didn't really actually go that far from where she had rented the boat, when you think about it. That's interesting, because I was trying to think like, yeah, it was, these lakes are interesting too, because they have like, sometimes they even have like a big floating restroom that's like, sealed, of course, to not leak human waste.
Oh,
yeah.
For real? There's like a
toilet?
Yeah, like a floating toilet? That's like a cruise ship.
Yeah, well, like in the middle of the lake, you know what I mean? Like the lake has an
cruise
actual
ship, because a cruise ship is a floating toilet.
That's true. yeah, I get it. Yeah, it's true. It's like there'll be like a chemical toilet kind of floating thing there, because they can't obviously have people dumping their waste. So here's some still footage of the shrine and the different remembrances. And it was pretty ornate. I mean, it was pretty built out. As a side note, you and I were talking. I one of the things I do, sort of just for fun, because it doesn't really make much money for me, is I do stock footage. And this was the fastest I ever had any of my stock footage sell after I posted it. So I already had five of my pictures get sold that I had posted, and they are, of course, available for anybody that wants to buy them off of Shutterstock. But yeah, so I think this gives a good sense for the kind of terrain. This is the kind of lake. This is a lake it happened in. This is the kind of lakes we have down here. We have a lot of very dry terrain around. We have some forest, but it's very dry forest. There's a lot of farms right adjacent to this, and the farms are like citrus and avocado, and there's also a horse ranch just south of this. There's a horse ranch right before you get to there.
I feel like we are about to get sponsored by Lake Piru.
Lake Piru, buy your tickets now. So buy your camping permit. Sponsored by by County of Ventura and the National Forest. So so getting back to the case, and we can get into the kind of the discussion about what happened here. The sheriff's office did their search and rescue. They closed out the lake to the public, as I showed you. They couldn't find her body for...
Right. A quick note here. Could we potentially do a 2-minute break here? Right, guys. So, sorry for that break. Another technical issue on our end. Man, the connection is definitely weird today. So, as you were saying, let's jump back into the case, into the details, and I guess the mystery part of Naya Rivera's death.
Yeah, so yeah, they did a bunch of the Ventura County Sheriff's Office. They they had several days, sadly, of searching. It was interesting how it took so long to find someone that was dead. And I think this got into some of the theories we had about like how did this person die? Because it seems so strange that it would be so hard to find a drowned body without there being some other factor for why the body was not immediately obvious. And there was no like it says here in the description a lack of evidence, and Josie telling the officers Josie's the main witness, and he's telling her, well, he saw her disappear underwater. So that's kind of strange too. That doesn't really sound like he watched someone drown. I don't know. It's a little bit vague. Said the visibility was really poor in the water. That's interesting to me. I wonder why that lake is so sedimenty. You would think in a lake with no waves there would be a lot of clear water, but they ended up having to use sonar devices and sniffer dogs and
sniffer dogs for like
underwater
search.
Corpse, probably sniffing for signs of decomposition. I'm betting just like just seeing if they caught the scent of a dead body. I'm betting that they just couldn't see. And this went for days. I mean, even there's a picture which I don't know if we have it of like I think her father jumping in the water, swimming around frantically, trying to find her, and they had even had to dissuade local civilians from trying to search. Everybody got really, really into it and really emotionally involved. So no wonder. It seems like she had a lot of fans. So, and I think probably the local community took it a little bit personally. So yeah, they even hired a private contractor, and then finally on July 13th, so that's like what, 5 days later, they finally found a body floating. So that is interesting because I mean that's usually what happens. Bodies start to decompose, the gas balance changes, and then they float to the top.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that. Yeah, that's really that's a good point.
When they blowed up, so I guess that's what they were. That's why they have the dogs there for too, right? To try to sense that. So they think there's been a couple of different explanations. I think this is where this is the solvable mysteries part of this episode, because this is a little bit different than kind of our usual conversation. But this is the tie-in to the show is there's a lot of theories, and you and I, when we talked about this beforehand, weren't completely satisfied with the theories we've heard so far. And I think it's worth kind of tossing back and forth what they've been saying. So
yep, definitely. If I could just quickly step in here, time is still sensitive for us, but I will quickly just mention a few things. I'm not necessarily 100% like contesting the official story that I guess you will talk about soon, but then again, I'm just saying that there are points in this case that would sort of like, just thinking logically, that would not make too much sense, but I guess we will get into that. So yeah, that's just a disclaimer on my end, I guess.
Yeah, good, true enough. And yeah, I mean, I'm not suggesting anything too controversial, but I think it's just more the nuts and bolts of the accidental drowning and just looking really quickly at the statistics of how people die. One interesting thing to point out is, I guess maybe not so strangely, 80% of drowning victims are male. I guess it's usually boys and men that do the more risky behavior on waterways. And one of the biggest factors is not wearing your life preserver. So it seems like there's no doubt here that fortunately, Naya, and maybe she was a really strong swimmer, it does seem like it was sort of a fatal mistake to not wear that life preserver and or have another adult around, because I think that's a lot to take on. So you're taking on watching your child. It's so interesting. And, I've lost a friend to drowning. People often underestimate waterways and how dangerous the water is. The water is a pretty harsh and unforgiving environment for animals like us that are not necessarily aquatic. So here's the thing. So with the sheriff, they had a couple different versions. So one of their, I think earlier on they were saying that maybe Rivera and Josie have been caught in a rip current. Like I said, it's so strange to me. I've never heard of that in a lake, but I'm not like a super big lake person versus an ocean person. I've heard of rip currents for sure and ocean stuff, but lake stuff, I don't really get it. The lake isn't that big, and there's no rivers floating in it. But I guess there's a really strong wind, and it says here they struggled to get back to the boat and found unanchored. Maybe that was the other mistake. So I'm not really sure why she didn't. Maybe she just didn't know. Though like I said, some of the locals I'd heard said that she'd been down there a lot. So it sounds like she had experience with it. I mean, just for her to be confident enough to go rent a boat and take it out by herself,
that's a strange move right there, because I'd probably do that, but I would have like I'd be second guessing myself. Do I know what's going on here? But if you do that with your son, who's 4 years old, I think at that point you feel pretty confident in your capabilities of handling that boat.
Yeah, it's so true, because I mean, like I said, I've done the lakes as on Boy Scouts and stuff like that, where we would actually rent boats, but I never rented this kind of boat, and I don't think I ever would have felt confident to jump out of a boat without my life preserver, by myself with my child, or without my child, and without anchoring it. Like, anchoring is sort of like rule number one, because that wind. And that thing is just these big flat sides. That wind for sure will push things around. I remember trying to steer a canoe for a test, a final, for a merit badge in a really strong wind, and it was hell. It was one of the hardest things in a strong wind to try to move a boat around, and that was something that was way more aerodynamic and hydrodynamic. So okay, so they said that they had probably struggled to get back into the boat. She probably had exhausted herself. And, I think you and I both had talked about, well, she maybe had panicked. Because part of what I wondered was, like you pointed out, I didn't even realize until you pointed this out, that he was wearing the life preserver. So from my thought, it's like, well, okay, half of your worries are gone then, because whatever the life preservers, the life jackets, you can't drown. They're made so you can be knocked unconscious and still live.
Yeah. So exactly, that's their main purpose, right? So Josie was wearing one, so theoretically she could, if we are going by the official theory, that she did pull Josie up from that water, and then she drowned. Now I see two holes in this. With all due respect to everyone who made those theories, why would he state that, like Naya Rivera, she was a loving mother, she was a really amazing person, she did a lot for the LGBT community, she's well known for these things, but they are stating that she died a hero by saving Josie. But if, for say, she did not pull Josie up to this boat, wouldn't Josie still be alive? I mean, sure, a lot of things could happen while Josie is floating, but I think the point that I'm trying to make. Like, Josie still was wearing that life jacket that would have sort of preserved his life. If I don't know if there are any dangerous water animals that could get to you.
No, nothing there. Yeah,
so,
no, I mean, yeah.
So that's even makes it even more questionable, like the statements,
I don't even get, because like I said, this isn't the ocean. It's a lake that's not even that big. Like, this lake, I could, when I'm in shape, I could swim from I could swim across it in the narrower parts. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't want to swim it from end to end, but to swim from a boat to shore, especially if you're just towing a child who's already got a flotation device on, and that flotation device might actually be enough to float both of you if you hold on to him. So I don't understand why she couldn't have, I mean, it would have been embarrassing, right? Would have been embarrassing to get to shore and to have someone come help you. And so that sometimes I think people do die because they're embarrassed. I watched a video the other day where this kid was choking to death. He didn't choke. He was a kid in high school. He didn't die, one of his friends finally figured out what was going on and gave him the Heimlich maneuver. But like he wasn't really signaling. It was almost like he was embarrassed that he couldn't breathe. And then like so like sometimes I've heard this before in a movie too, but sometimes it does seem like people die almost out of shame or kind of make things worse because they don't want to pull the alarm bell and get everybody involved. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't. I guess the other thing is I don't really understand how she would even have. It's kind of hard to lift somebody out of the water. Like, you know what I mean? From the water, it's hard. I don't know if you've ever tried to do stuff that like water polo players do. Like even
No.
trying to get yourself like half a foot out of the water to throw a ball, like water polo style.
It's difficult.
It's hard. Yeah, those guys look like super muscular models because they have to. That's how much strength it takes. And I guess that's the other thing though is, I guess I could see if you were both thrashing in the water, one of the most dangerous things, you can drown because someone else is drowning. So I guess I could see her exhausting herself and kind of the panic around the boat and trying to catch the boat and trying to drag the kid to the boat. It seems really weird, right? Like it seems like somehow she got all her strength up to get him in the boat, and then she falls, like passes out unconscious.
Let's pause it. Okay, we're going by the official theory. She lifts Josie up on the boat, and then she, doesn't have enough strength to save herself, and then she drowns. Now, when I look at this boat, I can see like ledges and multiple things that you could hang on
Hanging
to
off of it,
while
yeah.
you regain your strength. Because I've been in situations, obviously, when I'm not like drowning or whatever, but when I'm, like in the pool or whatever, where I've done like laps of swimming and whatever, and I want to pull myself up from the pool, but I'm like hanging on for a few moments to regain my breath, to regain my like strength, and then I do that, because there's a bunch of places where you could just hang on. It seems like,
Yeah, so I mean, the water for sure was cold. I'm betting. I mean, these are not super warm lakes. Might have not been ocean cold. So I guess that would be the other thing I would think of is maybe she did try to hang on for a while and succumb to some stage of hypothermia, and then passed out into the water. So maybe that I could see as plausible, is that maybe it was a combination of this. But I guess it would be interesting to see when they do an autopsy if there's any kind of scraping injuries or things that, because here's the thing, when before we heard all this, like a week ago when I was talking about this with my sister before they found her body, we were talking back and forth, and we are like, yeah, how does someone because sometimes people do literally just dive into a lake and don't come up. So then it's like,
yikes,
well, what happens?
that's scary, man. That's really scary.
Yeah, it's scary because it's like you don't really expect it. And sometimes the theories are, and I was trying to find, when I was looking up the drowning statistics, I couldn't find anything about this, which was really strange. They had all these other statistics about like drinking and all these other, not wearing your life jacket. It was, of course, like one of the number one factors, that and being male to dying, to drowning. But yeah, it was like, so one theory was, well, you dive down, you get caught in some lake weeds, which, like, for sure those things do have like a lot of lake weeds like growing up in the bottom. Maybe somehow you get them wrapped around you and you can't come up, and then you suck in a bunch of water and you're finished, right? Like you can't come back from that. So that maybe that's what held her body down so long, is you get stuck under there, you suck up some water. So maybe it wasn't really her using all her strength. Maybe she did swim with him, got him up in the boat, and was going to just tool around in the water some more, knowing he was safe in there. Maybe the boat was fine unanchored, for all we know. Maybe that she was having a fine, and maybe something else happened. The other thing was, my sister said, well, maybe there's big temperature discrepancies in the water. So if there's a lot of weird currents and stuff like that, so maybe you dive a little deeper and you suddenly hit like a really sharp, like a sharp temperature difference, like going from 60 degrees or 70 degrees to like 40 degrees, and you go into shock. And I'm like, that makes sense, because I know at the beach, we talked about the temperature differences where, the water was like 59 degrees at the beach I was at today, and which is, what did we say? That was 17 degrees Celsius for
I think
you?
this was like 14, man, or 15.
Yeah,
Which
okay.
is
Yeah,
pretty cold, man. It's a
pretty cold.
cold water.
And it's funny because like the worst part is like every time, man, every time this happens, it's already bad, like getting up to like your chest and other parts of your body, but as soon as you get your head in there, your face and your head is like, oh, like you almost like gasp. And I'm like,
Yeah.
maybe someone dives in, maybe she dove in from the boat, which like, you dive in from the boat, you get 9-10 feet deep, maybe you hit like a 40-degree temperature layer, and you're just like, and your body just goes into shock.
That
Because it's
that
just
could
so
be a
much
possibility.
different.
Yeah, I never really considered
Yeah.
the discrepancies in I guess the water temperature. That's a good theory your sister made. Yeah, that's a good one. It could be the case. Yeah.
I mean, just to finish it off, yeah, because I mean these lakes weren't formed by nature, right? So like other lakes and stuff, maybe sometimes aren't always so deep because like time and hundreds or thousands of years have had time to fill in a lot of sediment and stuff.
Yeah.
Like these are literally like mountain valleys that they've stuck a dam on one end and just poured in a river from the other side and filled it up. So like, for instance, like Lake Tahoe, which I think is natural, but some of these lakes, I guess my point is some of these lakes are really deep. And because of that, some of the hydrodynamics and the temperature dynamics that are going on are not maybe so predictable as like when you go to the beach. Like I don't expect 10 feet off shore to be 20 degrees colder than the water, that I was just in. I guess
Yeah.
that's that kind of stuff. But yeah, I can tell you I've been swimming in one of the other lakes, Castaic, and it is creepy when you hit those lake weeds. It does feel like, it feels bad, man. It feels like stuff's grabbing you.
Oh,
So
goddamn. Yeah,
yeah.
I'm now that you brought this lake weeds thing up, I'm thinking that could definitely be a real possibility in this case because yeah, if your foot for say gets tangled up in one of those weeds, and just in general the situation is quite shocking for a person, it's pretty safe to say that you're not being super rational. Your rationale is not functioning at like 100% of its capacity, so you're wasting all of your energy lifting your son who has a life jacket on up to the boat, and then maybe in your head you're like, I could still get out of here, but only then you realize that you can't get out of those weeds, and you hang on to the boat for a while, but then maybe the weeds sort of drag you into the water. That would be probably the most horrific way to go. That's crazy right there.
Yeah. So I think that's probably a good segue to talk about. Well, and then maybe to finish off the thought is, I think I've beat this horse to death about the life jackets and life preservers and flotation devices, but it says here that a lot of people die every year. Something like, I think it says here in the stats, something like 10 people drown a day or something like that. Some kind of say every day about 10 people die. This is in the United States alone. Every day about 10 people die from an unintentional drowning. So not suicide. And of these, 2 are children aged 14 or younger. Like I said, it's overwhelmingly male, but it's a big problem. So I think, if there was one thing that I think all of us wish Naya would have done, it would have been to wear her life jacket, because I think almost no matter what, short of like freezing to death, from not getting to shore, which shore's right there. Like it's not, I know it looks big in this camera footage, but it's not even, I'd be amazed if it's even a mile across. So yeah. So I guess this is a good time for me to stop talking so much and for us to segue into the Glee, the curse of Glee, and what has happened to the performers.
Right. the curse of Glee. So I guess the case probably this episode probably had to be like really heavy on the situation with Naya Rivera, because I think there was some mysterious details in her unfortunate passing that we sort of had to discuss. Now the other people that have passed away from the Glee cast were, I think they passed away in pretty like rationally explainable ways, but just the amount of people that have passed and just the amount of tragedy that has hit this one show, this one cast of characters, it's pretty astonishing. I don't think I've ever heard of so many people dying from one show, you know? So I think we could jump into the first person who has passed away. Also, unfortunately, now this would be this man right here. His name was Cory Monteith, and he was also a character in this case. Now, a little bit of a back. He was a character in the Glee show. Now, I will just quickly jump through his life. Now, why Cory Monteith passed? Well, he had, I would say, a tragic personal life, especially when he was young. So he played Phil Hudson on the show, basically a school jock, high school jock who got blackmailed for having weed, and that's pretty ironic, to sing with the other choir kids. So the script is, I mean, it's something right there. So he got blackmailed for having weed to sing with the choir kids on the show, but then he was actually addicted, like started having drug issues at the age of 13. So I don't know how. I think at the back of his head he was probably, yo, these people are like, these guys know about me. You know what I'm saying? Because like that's a weird plot line right there. So he was actually found dead on 2013 in his hotel room in Vancouver, British Columbia. We have like some images from that event. Now you could see the ambulance is dragging his body out of that hotel room, and now he has died. By basically a quick backstory on him, he started doing drugs at the age of 13. At the age of 16 he actually left school, and there was an intervention by his family and friends to enter drug rehabilitation at the age of 19. And he also has attended 16 schools. So that's an odd thing to do for a person, you know, like 16 schools could probably mess with your head a little bit as well. Also, by the age of 16, his drug and alcohol dependency has increased to such high levels that he had turned to petty crimes, stealing from friends and family and whatever to finance his addiction. Now, on 2013, Monteith publicist, this is he was on the show for 4 years at that time. Pretty much his publicist announced that Cory had admitted himself into a treatment facility for substance addictions. Monteith's admission to rehab in March resulted from an emergency intervention of the Paramount lot, in which Murphy and other members, Murphy being the creator of Glee, and other cast members pretty much urged Monteith to accompany doctors to a rehab facility, and he had agreed to do it. Now his rehab pretty much went really well. That's what they say it did. But then, you know, in 2013 he actually overdosed. He was 31 years of age, and you know, he overdosed by heroin and alcohol. Now I really had like I found it really interesting that he was using a heroin, because when you think about heroin, that's usually like the bum drug, you know, like the people that are homeless usually are addicted on heroines. That's pretty much the misconception that people have. But heroin is a lot more widespread now. It has something to do with like stress relief, without sticking too long here, because we have another more I guess, problematic character that has died. Give us your take on heroin and how heroin is actually more widespread in, I guess, the celebrity world than we think.
Yeah, it's interesting. It seems to have a very heavy overlap with people that have to do performances. And I think it's the quick version. I think it has something to do with, on one hand, people that enjoy, that feel like they have to go out there and sing and dance and act and perform in front of a crowd. Even comedians, especially comedians, I guess, because a lot of them have died from opiate overdoses like heroin or oxy or things like that. I think it's like, on one hand, that's where their joy comes from, but then that's also one of the most stressful things you can do, right? There are people that would rather die than do like public speaking. Like they literally would rather die than make a speech in front of 100 people. So for someone that gets their kicks, that enjoys doing that, it's also a lot of stress. And then I think it's hard to like shift gears. So there's also a lot of like nervous system activity that comes from that. So even when you're not stressed, you're up, you're at, like how do you sleep, right? How do you get your mind off of things? I think it's also not controversial to say a lot of times people that want approval from people that they perform in front of. Maybe there's other issues in their lives that they're trying to forget or suppress, like maybe a parent or a family member, their friends didn't like them that much, so they're trying to kind of replace that hole in their soul from approval from other people. So anyways, yeah, it's super common. It's I would say, we talked about how like drowning was like one of the ways that you don't hear about famous people dying from. I would say heroin is super common. I mean, from jazz musicians to actors to singers to comedians, it's right up there with alcoholism and like car accidents.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that was Cory Monteith. Now, okay, so he seemed like a really nice dude, and everyone who knew him said that he was really great of a person. And sadly, he has passed away in 2013. Now, the cast of Glee actually did like a special episode. They killed off his character also in the show. They did like this huge thing and this huge like episode special for Cory, and he was actually dating one of his cast members at the time, Leah Michelle, and you could pretty much see this is her reaction to Cory's passing. So it's pretty crazy. It's definitely pretty crazy. Now we are moving to another person who has died from the show, and I guess two people dying from the show I think would not make it a curse, but we have like at least like 5 or like 6 people that have died in connection to the show. Now only 3 I say only, that's like a pretty crazy amount, like only 3 really big main characters have died. So I think when 3 main characters die from the show, I think that's not really a normal situation. I think there's something more involved. Now the other person who has died was Mark Salling. This dude right here. Now he played Noah Puckerman on the show. Yeah, so this is his character on the show. He allegedly called the choir, or like the other Glee cast characters on the show, he called them quote unquote gay, but then joined because some Quinn Fabre character got pregnant with his kid, but then that Quinn female was dating some other dude, and she lied to that dude that the kid was actually his and not Noah Puckerman's. But then Noah joined the choir just so he could not necessarily spy on Quinn, but like be closer to Quinn. So it's a whole plot line. Once again, it's an interesting script. Now, this guy right here, Mark Salling, he was born in Dallas, Texas, and he had an affinity for singing. Another interesting fact, he was actually dating Naya at some point. So, this is a connection, and it's a pretty wild connection, thinking that, not so long ago they were just dating and they were on the show, and now they are both dead, which is definitely crazy now. But Mark had his own issues. At first, I was like looking into this guy, and I was thinking this is a really nice dude, because there were like statements made by one of his, I guess, close friends, who he pretty much attended Eco Park Ornithology Club in Los Angeles. And the quote is, he really enjoyed bird watching a lot, and he really cared about birds. He had a lot of animals at his house, and he worked at animal rescue when I knew him. We went bird watching together, so I was like, yo, this guy is really cool. This guy was, I felt, really sad that he had passed away. But then I started looking into his details, like further life details. Now, he had some pretty crazy legal issues. In January 2013, Salling's ex-girlfriend Roxanne Gorzella, my bad, accused Mark of committing sexual battery on March 25th, 2011 by forcing her to have unprotected sex with her without her consent. He then denied these charges, filed a counter-suit for defamation, but ended up losing that whole case and had to pay $2.7 million to Roxanne Gorzella. So that probably a bad experience for anyone to have, and that pretty much makes your mental state not at a really good place. Now, on the same year, 2015, when he lost the suit, he was actually arrested in his Los Angeles home, and we can have some pictures from that situation. He was arrested on suspicion of possessing several thousand photos and videos depicting child pornography, following a tip-off to police from one of his ex-girlfriends. Now, karma definitely caught on to him, because, if he was really nice to his girlfriends, maybe they would have not tipped the police off. Also, I just find it strange for any woman to know about his, child pornography, I guess, stash, and still be okay with that. Maybe that's why he has a lot of ex-girlfriends, you know what I mean? So he was released later on a $20,000 bail, but then a search warrant found more than 50,000 images of child pornography. I'm thinking 50,000 images. How do you get a hold of 50,000 images of child porn, I don't even know where I could get like one. You know what I'm saying?
I think it's probably peer-to-peer stuff back in the day. I mean, it's always crazy when people do that, because that all can totally be traced, and often it is being actively traced or being put out there as bait to catch people. Yeah, it's pretty horrible. Yeah, maybe like I said, it's a tremendous volume of stuff, and
50,000 images, man.
Yeah.
Do you imagine those file sizes of like child porn? Oh my god, like that's crazy. So anyways, on 2017 he pleaded guilty to basically possessing all of these child pornography images, and pretty much Salling was expected to serve 4 to 7 years in jail, and also would be registered as a sex offender and should enter a treatment program. Then Salling was actually found dead. He was actually found dead because in January 30th, he had committed suicide in 2018 near his home in Sunland area of Los Angeles, 6 hours after he was reported missing, and pretty much he committed suicide right before his sentencing was due. So he was about to get like those 4 or 5 years in jail, and then he killed himself. And that's pretty much for Mark Salling. And then we also had a woman called Nancy Motes, who was an assistant on the show. Production assistant Nancy Motes was found dead in her hotel room, taking her own life in an apparent drug overdose. She drowned in a bath surrounded by non-prescription and prescription pills, according to the Los Angeles County coroner. Fellow production assistant Christian Ligman spoke to the time of Mote's death about the impact of the tragedies had on the Glee family, with colleagues posting basically on Facebook, "We lost another one." So in 2014, they were like, "Yo, this cast is cursed," and I think to close off this thing, I think if I was, someone from Glee, I'd be pretty spooked out. That's all I'm gonna say, because I don't know, man. Every year it seems like someone who had some connection with that cast runs into real problems.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I wonder what the counter argument is about that. Like, I wonder if someone could point to it having like a really big cast, or if there was anything else about it, or just that it was it's like a super demanding form of entertainment that has a lot of, on one hand, very hardworking and energetic, but also very like eccentric or eclectic or troubled personalities. Yeah, it's too bad. I said, I feel like this one with Naya is kind of a freak occurrence because, there didn't really seem to be any kind of, no one really had anything bad to say about her. There was nothing bad about her really out there at all. Had lived a pretty clean life, came from a family of winners. She was a winner. So yeah, it was like she was, and then, she dies doing something frankly wholesome, right? Like going out and exercising and spending family time with your kid. And then, yeah, I guess maybe that just points to, once again, even, maybe I always say, like, it's kind of interesting sometimes when people go on vacation or do leisure activities, sometimes, and we've all done it, sometimes it's almost really tempting to kind of feel like there's different rules. Like, you'd be surprised how many people die on their vacation, right? Because they do something that they don't normally do, and they take a risk.
No, Emily Bradley potentially.
Yeah, like her, or yeah, a whole raft of other people, some of who we talked about.
Madeline McCann.
Yeah, Madeline McCann. That was a great example of the parents seemingly suspending their good judgment. Yeah, I can't help but see a pattern there. But yeah, it's unfortunate. I think just if there was one thing I would point out, it would be, as much as it really feels dorky and it kind of sucks to wear like one of those big life preserver things around your neck when you're out in a boat, you just got to think about, like, if you were knocked unconscious right now, what is to keep you from drowning? And that thing is the only thing. It's like the airbag for boats,
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah. Okay, so I guess we're wrapping up the show pretty much, right? So I'm thinking for Naya Rivera's case, I will say that I'm right now I'm leaning towards the lake weed theory that you have brought up, because I haven't really considered it. I really saw it floating around, but I didn't really look that much into it. Now I'm thinking that could definitely be the case, what we've talked about. As for the other Glee members, I think the curse, I mean, I'm not sure if this cast is cursed. Maybe it is some like voodoo magic cast on these people, but I don't know why. They all seemed like really cool people. I mean, some of the cast members allegedly were not super nice. I think people know what I'm talking about, but everyone else seemed really nice. So I don't know why these bad things would be happening to them. Maybe these are just coincidences, hopefully no one else from this cast dies anytime soon. So I guess that would be my final thoughts. Anything you want to mention to our audience before we sign out, man?
Yeah, we've been really happy. I mean, every week it just gets better with the response to the show. to those of you making comments on the YouTube channel, to those of you commenting to us on social media, whether it's Twitter, or Instagram, or Facebook. And, with the launch of our podcasts, or our recorded show, we've been taking our historical library and pushing them out 2 a week. So it gives you a chance, I think, to go back and listen to the show, how it was before, how it is now, to revisit some of the topics we talked about. And we've covered so many great episodes. We're super happy. So thank you for your support. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for your show suggestions. And we really hope that you enjoyed this episode and that you will enjoy our podcast as well. Thank you, and keep on subscribing.
Yep. Thank you guys, and as always, stay safe, protect your families, and peace out.